Stroke recovery countdown. 10. Walks freely with no stick indoors and out. 9. Walks indoors with no stick. 8. Walks indoors with a stick. 7. Walks indoors with a stick and is always supervised. 6. Walks indoors with a stick and hands-on help. 5. Transfers to toilet and back with no help. 4. Transfers to toilet and back with help. 3. Stands up and sits down, with and without help. 2. Rolls on a bed independently. 1. Rolls on a bed with help. 0. Rolling or moving on a bed is distressing or upsetting. This video is not intended to replace or constitute medical advice on its own. It's really meant to act as a prompt to help a person who's had a stroke to be able to do and to refine the homework set by their own physiotherapist or physical therapist. That physiotherapist, I'm sure, doesn't need to give better advice, just that after stroke, following that advice if you've had a stroke can be really, really hard. At 0, movement in the bed is distressing. Turning, rolling on a bed is distressing, frightening, or resisted. And that happens a lot when there are communication difficulties. We tend to assume that communication not coming out is frustrating and all of those things. But it's also easy to assume that the spoken word or the instructional request is fully understood, and that might not be true. If you think that any of these problems are present, then of course proceed with caution and care and love. One good place to start in a bed is likely to be with eye exercises, finding something to stare at and trying really small movements of the head. The head doesn't need to move very far, but the eyes should be able to stay still. The head should be able to stay still, and the eyes move without dragging the head away. There could be as much as 25 degrees of an arc of that movement. So get help checking how much there is and how accurately you can do that kind of activity. Of course, I've just looked at left, right, no surprises that up and down are equally important. And in fact, when we tilt our heads, our eyes roll also to help try to make sense of the world. Stage 1, rolling on a bed, but with help. This is one area that is heavily underused as a therapy. Whether it's at this point or in goal number 2 or even later. Rolling movements particularly use a lot of our main trunk muscles. And there are ones that go top to bottom, diagonally left to right, right to left, and straight across, seemingly without even going over joints. And part of their function, a little further on, is to help with sitting and controlling sitting. But here's another contentious point. Most people aren't taught to sit after stroke. We often find them upright in a chair, and they're tolerating some of that. That's a key word. They're said to have sitting balance. But this is one of the main causes of the severe disruption to arm and leg action. That's usually known as spasticity. You've heard that phrase if you've been through the system. It's not always practical to fully prepare someone for sitting. We can't always do these phases in order. People who are doing later work still need to be working on the eye functions in number 1 and starting on other tummy work. Breathing's a good example of that. Regaining good use of breathing muscles is part of recovering the use of trunk, rib cage and pelvis. One of our biggest muscles is the diaphragm, which makes the roof of the abdomen, and it also, of course, has a muscular floor. It's got a muscular front wall, side walls and back walls, and they better all work together. Otherwise, recovery is going to be limited to a degree. Stage 3. Stands up and sits down in place, meaning without leaving the safety net of having a chair immediately underneath and behind. But to be able to get here, it's really important to get the spine moving, where the spine extends and gets longer, and where the hip joints flex and the pelvis rolls forward, which looks like this. From the slump position, the spine lengthens or extends, and the pelvis rolls forward, thus. If the spine will do this without deviation to one side, like so, leaning heavily and pulling through one elbow, one hand, then it's quite likely that early attempts to stand will be reasonably successful. Of course, other simple measures must be considered, such as foot position, a nice gap between feet, far enough back under the chair, and usually angled slightly outward. 5 to 1 on the clock face if you like. Early attempts at standing can be made with a hospital bed or a treatment couch across the middle, like a desk in front. So together with pads, cushions on the top, can make it feel really safe to try early attempts at standing. Stage 4 transfers to toilet and back with help. Chances are this will be easier with the best working side next to the target chair or toilet. And why I call it the best working side is because, let's be clear, both sides are affected by stroke. It's fair to say that generally one side is blatantly obvious. There may be pain, there may be extreme weakness, floppiness, or the tightening of muscles uncontrollably, and that's the obviously affected side. Look closely at the so-called unaffected side and you'll see minor problems with coordination, timing, and those types of functions. But they're there. If they're not dealt with, then recovery will be somewhat limited. If only one side is treated or exercised, you are likely to miss or delay your best potential of recovery. Stage 5 transfers with no help at all. Once standing is mastered, 4 and 5 can be close if you start with confidence building. So beginning with steps to feet slightly apart and back. No intention of attempting the transfer in these early stages. Just set the goal to feel safe while moving one foot. One foot out to the side at first, and only a little later starting to think of 1 foot forward and 1 foot back. Walking indoors with help is aim number 6. An assistant needs to be friendly, agile and quite strong to really induce confidence in the early stages. Exercises to prepare include just standing in front of a chair, feet apart and feet together, beginning with 1 pace forward and 1 pace back. They say Rome wasn't built in a day, so there's no rush at this. We're not going to fix these problems in 1 day or even 1 week. Most likely, if you're watching this video, if you've got so far as watching this, it's taken you weeks, maybe months already. So we're not going to try any heroics. Build slowly. Level 7. walks indoors with supervision only. Maybe someone who's got to goal number 6 and is doing well with no signs of mistakes that lead to falling and hasn't needed physical support for quite some time, feels ready to be let go. A friendly could follow with a chair or a wheelchair for practice. Question is, how do we know in advance? When do you first let go? I always advise people to get professional help at that stage, if not at any other. One way is to master stepping with a greater distance supporter, or the supporter is in a different room once you've achieved it with supervision. Gradually they withdraw and allow you time to build your confidence. But go back to the safer versions when you first do them on your own. Going back a stage is always helpful. It's not a sign of defeat. It's useful revision. You did it when you went to school, and I urge you to do it now. And when you're at level 10, I think it's great to be doing level 1 work, and level 2, and level 3, and level 4, etc. Level 8, walks indoors with a stick. There's a good chance that someone working even at this quite high level may still have a very inactive or tight arm or hand. So a lot of care and planning into how that walking person is held, supported or protected is essential. It's not good to risk situations where an inactive arm has to be grabbed at, because they can still be really painful at this stage. Don't be shy of using things like handling belts. They can be very useful things to hold on to and gradually be used to withdraw that support. And then with support, gradually starting to work into stepping onto a low block and then a slightly higher block up to, roughly speaking, the height of an ordinary stair, which is 8 inches in old money, 20 centimeters in metric. Of course, frequently at that level, people will also be using some form of foot and ankle splint. It may be a soft one, it may be semi-rigid, maybe one of the carbon fiber special ones. Perhaps if you're really lucky, it's one of the electronic ones that stimulate muscle.
I can see that.
Yeah. How does it feel? So
This one is smooth, but
to lift the toes through for that all-important clearing the toes. Level 9 is walking indoors with no stick. To achieve this, a person must be able to step onto a bottom stair, 8 inches, 20 centimeters, without holding a rail. The knee must remain stable, not flick back over locking or giving way, of course. Toes must be able to lift whilst standing, and maybe leaning against a wall. Lastly, level 10 in this series, walking freely with no stick, indoor and out. How we know somebody will be able to do this and the movements and exercise they must be working on to achieve. Writing, saving and equilibrium responses I'll put in a separate video, and these are the level of exercises that need to be worked on for that really free, outdoor, maybe difficult surfaces type of mobility. Thanks for watching. Do like and subscribe, which helps to keep the channel going. And of course, click the alarm bell so that you get a notification, a wee message, when the next video comes up. The channel's still really small, so if you've got a problem and you want a video to address it, I can use that to make new and interesting content which will help lots of people, not just yourself. So put your remarks in the comments and we'll see you next time.